guys, welcome back to Hope, Heal, and Shine. I'm Michelle, and this week we are talking about the difference between rape and sex. Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's been about a month since I've been on here because I just had my fourth baby, which has been super fun for our family, and now I'm excited to get back to these videos. So this week marks 15 years since I graduated from high school. Feels kind of crazy to me. It wasn't too long after starting college that I actually met my abuser. So reflecting on that time in my life, there's a few things that I really wish I would have known before going off into the world by myself. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of those things in the hopes of preparing future college students for their journey into adulthood, or to help prepare parents of teenagers being sent off into the world, or really just for anybody who needs this information. This is just some good, solid information to have, so I hope it helps somebody. Let's dive in. First thing we're going to do is talk about three definitions. We're going to talk about sexual assault, rape, and sexual intercourse, and what each of those are and how they are different from one another. Also be sure to check out my video on the definition of consent. Sexual intercourse is defined as any intrusion, however slight, by any part of a person's body or by any object into the genitalia or anal opening of another person's body. Vaginal intercourse, or any insertion, however slight, of the hand, finger, or object into the vagina, vulva, or labia, with the exception of such insertions for medical treatment or examination. Sexual intercourse also includes oral or anal penetration. Emission of semen is not required. Now, I read this definition because over the years I have met and spoken to many people who their understanding of what sex was, like the legal, medical, actual definition of sex, they did not have a full grasp of. I was one of those people, and sadly, my story is not unique. I have met many, many other people who did not understand this and were subsequently taken advantage of because of their lack of knowledge or understanding about this, just as I was. I've heard people make up things like, oh, it doesn't count as sex if you use a condom, or if you pull out, or if you don't go in very far, or if the man doesn't finish. Wrong. No. Legally and medically speaking, even the slightest degree of penetration counts. So if someone's trying to convince you that what you're doing isn't sex, but it fits this definition, guess what? They are lying to you to get what they want. Know the definition to keep yourself safe. So understanding the definition of sex, we can now move on to what is the definition of rape. Rape is defined as the penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim. So this definition includes any gender of victim or perpetrator, not just women being raped by men. It also recognizes that rape by an object can be as traumatic as penile or vaginal rape. This definition also includes instances in which the victim is unable to give consent because of temporary or permanent mental or physical incapacity. Furthermore, because many rapes are facilitated by drugs or alcohol, the new definition recognizes that victims can be incapacitated and thus unable to consent because of ingestion of drugs or alcohol. Similarly, a victim may be legally incapable of consent because of age. The ability of victims to give consent must be determined in accordance with the individual state statutes. Physical resistance is not required on the part of the victim to demonstrate lack of consent. So then what is the biggest difference between rape and sex? It is intent and consent. Now again, don't forget to check out my video on consent to understand what that means a little bit better, but a quick definition is an enthusiastic yes. Whether given verbally or non-verbally, the intent and the desire matter. Now, sexual assault can include attempted rape or unwanted touching of sexual body parts, including the genitals, the anus, the groin, the breast, the buttocks, or inner thigh, for purposes of sexual gratification. When one person is seeking their personal sexual gratification at the expense of harming or hurting another person, even if in this person's mind they don't think they're hurting you, it is still considered sexual assault. Now, sadly, as I've mentioned in other videos, a lot of people don't think that they are causing harm because in their minds, sex is the most amazing thing in the world, and everyone wants sex from them. This was the attitude of not only my abuser, but sadly of other men I dated as well. Any kind of sexual touch that is unwanted is considered sexual assault. This can also include unwanted kissing, and yes, kissing is a sexual act. These definitions aren't just important for women and girls to know, it's important for men to know as well. As we discussed in that definition of rape, men can be victims, women can be perpetrators, and both sides, whether that's the victim or the perpetrator, need to understand what consent is, because I've also met people who have pushed someone they care about past their limits, and when they realized how traumatic that was for the person, it devastated them. It devastated them to know. But because consent is not talked about, and because so often men are taught this is what you need, this is what makes you a man, and women are taught men always want this, too often people are becoming perpetrators without even realizing it. So that is why these definitions are so critical, and why as parents, we need to be informed about this so that we can have these conversations with our children. In addition to knowing these definitions, I want you to also know that you always have a right to say no. Always. It doesn't matter if the other person is turned on and really, really wants it. Doesn't matter. You have a choice of what happens to your body. Always. It doesn't matter if you said yes and then changed your mind. Guess what? Your body, you get to say yes or no. And I tell you that somebody who really cares about you, they might be disappointed if you say no, and that's okay. It's okay for people to be disappointed. What's not okay is somebody threatening to hurt you, threatening to break up with you, threatening to cheat on you, any of these things if you don't do it. Someone like that doesn't care about you and does not deserve to be with you. If you are not ready or not in the mood for sex, don't let anybody pressure you into doing something you don't want to do. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for your relationship. So why is it important to know these definitions? Because knowledge is power. And healthy sexuality starts with understanding what sex is. Having this knowledge will help enable you to not be tricked, manipulated, or coerced by people who have selfish intents and motivations. Knowing this information can help keep you safe. It can also help you, if you have been abused, to know that it's not your fault, and can help you overcome many of the negative mindsets about sexuality that come with being abused. There is a big difference between sex and rape, and one of my biggest pet peeves is people treating them like they're the same thing. If you are a survivor and you ever tell your story by saying that your abuser had sex with you, when what you really meant was they raped you, I think changing the word you use is very important, because sex is not rape and rape is not sex. And understanding that, being able to differentiate between the two, is one of the biggest steps forward in having a healthy sexuality. So for a minute, I want to speak to parents. Parents, it is so essential that you are the one that teaches your children how to have a healthy mindset about sex. Because if you don't do it, the world will teach your child about sex, but they will not do it in a healthy way. I went out into the world not knowing anything, and the person who stepped up to teach me was my abusive, manipulative ex-boyfriend who used my naivety and took advantage and raped me because of what I didn't know. And because of what I didn't know and didn't understand, and because of the things I believed that he taught me, I stayed with him, and the abuse continued for months. So we talked about the importance of knowing these definitions because it will help keep you safe and it will help you heal. But parents, even more beneficial than all of this, is that when you are able to have difficult conversations with your children are more likely to have difficult conversations with you. I know that as a parent, I want nothing more than to have a relationship with my children that when they are struggling with something, that they feel comfortable to come and talk to me about it, no matter how uncomfortable or embarrassing it may be for them. And I know that they will never be able to do that if I don't first step out of my comfort zone and be willing to talk to them about topics that might make me uncomfortable. If I can't admit my mistakes, if I can't apologize to them, if I can't have open conversations and dialogue with my children, how will they ever learn to have that with me? I really believe that instilling a healthy mindset around sex in our children starts first with us having a healthy mindset about sex. And then it begins from the day they're born with us talking to them about their body and not shaming it, calling body parts what they are, teaching them about their bodies, and teaching them age-appropriate material as they get older. The concept of the talk no longer exists. We do not live in a world where we have the privilege of waiting till a child is 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever age you were given the talk. I don't know. I was never given the talk. So whatever age you were given the talk, that's out. That's out. Children, by the time they're in junior high, most kids probably already know a lot more than you want them to know. I grew up kind of in a little bubble and literally wasn't taught anything until college. But the world we're living in now is not the world where you can just keep a child in the dark and trust that they're just not going to have questions, not going to be curious, and not do anything with that curiosity until they're married. And that somehow, even though no one's ever talked to them about sex, they're suddenly going to have a happy, healthy sex life with their spouse. No. And I seriously doubt if that's the way you were raised, that truly worked out for you too. Because I don't think it ever has. So it's time to break the cycle. So replace the talk with ongoing, age-appropriate conversations with your child regarding things like sex, their body, consent, how to set and respect boundaries, and what to do if somebody else is not respecting their boundaries. Additionally, I just want to say to all parents that it is never too late to start. Ideally, you start from day one, right? You start from day one, your child is born. They may not understand you, but you get into the practice of, guess what? I'm going to call these body parts what they are because there's nothing wrong or dirty or bad about them, and I need my child to know that. The same way this is called a hand, guess what? Your genitalia, it has names, and they should be talked about without embarrassment. That doesn't mean we need to talk about them flippantly or disrespectfully. You can teach your child that these are private parts, that we don't need to talk about them or display them in public. But the lack of communication about them creates an environment of shame. Not talking about sex, not talking about the body parts, all of that creates an environment of shame around it because obviously it's too bad to even talk about. So if something were to happen to your child, why on earth would you think they would come and talk to you about it if it's such a bad and dirty thing that you as an adult can't even talk to them about it? But know that no matter what age your children are, it's never too late to start having these conversations with them to build that relationship of trust and openness and honesty and vulnerability with your child. And yes, there are certain times when maybe there is a bigger talk that needs to be had, before someone gets married, before someone leaves for college, maybe before prom. Whenever that time comes, know that talking about sex with your child is not suddenly going to put ideas in their head and make them curious when they weren't curious before. No, I promise you, your child still has questions and curiosity. They're just not talking to you about it. So make yourself a safe space for them to come and talk to you by being the one to initiate the conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it may be at first. Make it comfortable to live in the uncomfortable. Make it normal in your house to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations. That's it for today. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, if you have questions, please feel free to comment or shoot me a message. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I will be back again next week with our video on hope. Thank you guys for watching and have a great week. Bye.